So I'm going to basically jump right in and show you how we run an A/B test using Vanity and how simple, hopefully simple it is to do. Things go well here. So to start with, get this situated here. So I'm going to start with a real basic Rails 2.3 app that, let's see if it shows this page yet. All right, perfect. So it's a real basic Rails app, 2 pages, home page and a cool page, which is what we want our users to do. So to install Vanity, all you have to do is include the gems. Let's see. And now I'm using a specific commit for Vanity that adds support for. By default, the Vanity does not collect data in development mode, so they put a patch for that recently that allows you to do that in the latest version. So that's what that's all about. That's what I'm doing here. All right. First you start off by creating an experiment, which is just by creating an experiment file in the experiment file off of the experiment subfolder there. All right, and this is just a A/B test DSL, which basically lists the alternatives. Here we're going to use, we have a hypothesis that maybe hello will perform better than hi. So we're going to have 2 alternatives, hi and hello, and we're going to define success by a metric called cool views, which is views of that cool page that I showed you there. And so we need to create the metric as well. Alright, and by doing that, I've now defined an experiment with a metric. I'm going to restart Rails one more time. Oops. And we'll go ahead and add code into our application to the last step. Tell application controller to use Vanity, and the default here is cookie based, which every user that comes to your site will be given a cookie that is an identifier, and that'll be used to determine which experiment that they're put in. You can get more complicated by using your user IDs for users that are logged in. We have a little more complicated setting where basically users come in, they're assigned a Vanity ID, then when the users are created, we attach the Vanity ID to the users. And then we use that once they're logged in, so that so they always get the same alternatives when they come back to the site. And then we go to our index.html page, and here we said hi. Now Now we put this little code here, this little snippet, which is this A/B test is the is when it's called, it'll return one of the alternatives, randomly one of the alternatives for the user. So in this case, it'll return hi or hello. And then finally, we just need to track this. So when this cool action is called, now we call track on the metric that is attached to that experiment, and that will be defined as a success. All right. And if everything is going well here, should now. So half the time users will see hello, and half the time they'll say hi. I'm using Chrome's incognito mode here, so we'll get different results. See exactly the porn mode, so that we don't carry over cookies. And then, so as soon as we click on cool, that person was defined as a success. And now, in order to see that success, let me show you one other quick trick here. Vanity comes with a command line tool where you can type Vanity list. This will list all the experiments that are currently running, and each alternative is given a thumbprint, as they call it here. Which this thumbprint, let me get that to you. We're on high. This is useful for if you're as a developer or whatever you want to demo this and you want to put a user in a specific alternative. You take that, and now from the command line you could do using that query param, and it'll switch the experiment for that user. So that's great for when you want to put users through usability tests, or you just you need to switch to see a certain experiment on production or whatever. And there's also a Vanity Report, which will create an HTML file, which basically shows you the current experiments and how they're doing. So in this case, we've had three participants, and 50% of the hi people have clicked the cool, and none of the hello people. All right, but there's another useful thing. Rather than having to run that all the time, you could go into your create an admin page for viewing this as well. That comes with this extension to the routes that create a route for you. Create a controller. And now, go to /Vanity, and you'll show the same page in real time. And I didn't mention, but the backend for Vanity is by default Redis. The latest version of Vanity also supports Mongo, which I haven't tried. And they have created sort of this adapter model, so I know that people out there that are working on MySQL, Postgres, or basically an active record adapter. So there's one sort of represent that. Let's get it down. Right, let's see where we're at. All right, so let me just go ahead, and I've got a test program, or a test script here that will basically run through 100 times, and 75% of the times it sees hello, it'll click the cool link, and 35% of the time it sees hello, it'll do it.
Does that need to add up to 100%?
I'm sorry?
Never mind.
No. And we'll see that about 75%, exactly 70% in this case. And in this case, the differences are so large that it will declare a winner at only 103 participants. A lot of times, though, it'll take thousands of participants to get a winner if the results are really close. So that's what sort of Steve was talking about, where on how we declare a winner. So if the results are a big difference between the results, then it doesn't take as many participants. But if there's a lot of results, or a small difference, then it does. And I guess that's really about it. Yes?
How to declare a winner? You just took that
Oh, okay, so it's basically just using a formula for statistical significance.
No, I'm saying, you said, okay, option A. How do I make option A now?
Oh, how do you do, okay, that's
Do I
good.
have to go into the
That's
code
good,
to do
that's
that?
a good question. There is a way to define in a metric, or in an experiment rather, to tell it once a certain level is reached, to just automatically convert everybody over. We actually don't use that. We just kind of watch this, and then once we're ready to be done, we remove the experiment.
So you manually go in?
We go in and we remove the code,
Okay.
yeah. But there is a way to tell it to automatically declare a winner. Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you know what the status is with Vanity and Rails 3? Is it running on Rails 3 yet?
I haven't tried running on Rails 3. I saw something in the Google group that says that it should work.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't really answer for it.
And what environment are you running it under? Are you running on Roku, under Passenger?
We're using Passenger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It works on Heroku too, though. I was actually going to put this app up on Heroku and also the source on GitHub in case anyone wants to look at the source.
Can you actually go back and show us where you were defining what the two tests were for Vanity?
Sure. Let's see. Right here?
Yeah. So you're giving those alternatives. How would you give it something more complicated, like a different page or different?
If you want to render two different templates.
Yeah,
say,
sure. Well, you
maybe
could, so alternatives will take, you could pass in basically anything for alternatives, with either string, symbols, or numbers, or what we'd use, and then just use that.
switch on
Yeah, you can switch on that. And I should have said that the A/B test that I use in the index HTML there, you could use that. You could call this A/B test in a controller, in a model. It's actually they actually define it on an object. So what you do in that case is in your controller you can just render whatever this comes out of. That's what we've done in the past. Yeah.
You said a blocked A/B test.
You can some blocked A/B test, yeah.
This may sound like a stupid question, but humor me. So, just at a high level, what is the big advantage of this over something really simple like Google Optimizer? What are the types of things you're going to do with this that you couldn't do with that?
So this is something that you can sort of embed deeper into your code. Like Google Optimizers can only be really, it's a JavaScript library that could be only for it could be perfect.
Like the example you gave, though, it would work fine for, right?
Perfect for, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you about some of the other examples that we've done in Food on the Table where we've used a little more complex things. We actually ran an experiment for a couple months over the summer where we were doing monetization experiments where 1/3 of our users were in the freemium version, 1/3 of them were in the free version, and 1/3 were in you get a 30-month day trial, and then you had to pay every month. So for that we changed messaging. We also changed whether or not you saw this, the upgrade page, or whether you were able to get a subscription page. So
You can kind of hook it through multiple places in the chain and say,
Yeah.
okay, if you see this at the beginning, then we're going to show you a different page at the end.
Exactly. And every new feature that we launch, pretty much we use this to determine, so only some of the users see it at first. We can see how it affects them, and that's that sort of thing. What else have we done? We've also, right now you go to the homepage and you register right from the homepage and you move on. We also ran an experiment where half the people would be able to start meal planning without giving us their email password until later on in the stage. And that was a test that turned out basically even. So for us, it was easier to have them register beforehand. It didn't make a difference.
Thanks.
Yep.
It's a really vanity question, but process questions. So how do you keep track of your baselines? Like changing things all the time. Like how do you know when you change one thing that affected versus the other thing you changed like 2 hours ago? It also affected
these tests are all independent. So as long as you're being careful, like Steve mentioned.
You said like you watched what they did, and then that would tell you whether the new feature was a good idea or not.
Right.
So like every time you do that, you compare how they're tracking versus how they tracked before. You keep like a single baseline.
No. We're comparing it against how the other set of people track. So it's like 50% of people get randomly 50% get one experiment or one alternative, and 50% get the other alternative, and compare how those 50% performing against the other 50%.
One alternative is always, I want to say always, is probably an exception. One alternative is always the way it is right now. And the second alternative is the new change.
Okay.
So you're always, so it's control and a new one, right? And you're always comparing against the control control to see, is it better or worse? And I'll give you money if you can do better than us, but well over half the time when we predict what the results are gonna be, we're wrong. We think, oh, this is such a small change, it's so trivial. You know what, I am certain it's gonna improve things. I know you're stupid, we don't need to run a test. You run the test, and abandonment rate goes up by 30%. So we just don't even have that discussion anymore.
So what happens in the life of the request? Like when you call A/B test, it's going to return the same value per
It's always
what
going
you
to return the
pass
same
in during
value.
the request.
Always
Right.
the same value for the same vanity ID, which is
Right.
cookie in this case.
So once a user is on a certain track, they stay on.
They stay on that
Right.
track, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. They come back over and over.
Otherwise, they could get different messages.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in this case, it's cookies, so if they were to clear the cookies or switch browsers, they wouldn't, but we attach it to a user ID, so they have to be logged in for most experiments, right? So, yeah.
So the results of A/B, like calling A/B tests, are you usually passing back like a whole partial or something, or is it usually like a gatekeeper value or something like that that allows you to do a different path in your partials or something?
No, it varies. A lot of times we have it just the alternatives be true or false, and it'll just be, do you see this or not? So for like homepage experiments, a lot of times it'll return a template name. And we actually have different template names, and we're using the controller which template we render. Sometimes it'll return a number, like we run tests to see whether users that are able to plan for 3 days versus users that plan for 4 days, how they perform.
So how does that factor into your tests? I'm assuming you guys do like automated tests.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. How does that?
Yeah, they have examples on their site on how to do that. Basically, just do like at the beginning of your test, you're saying this is the alternative. So you say like user chooses this alternative, and then so you sometimes will have to have different tests for different alternatives.
So you test both paths
Yeah.
before you deploy it,
Right.
or the other would just kind of
It depends on what the case, whether or not we need to or not.
One of the things we've discovered is that there isn't value in testing code that we know we're going to throw away. So we have to be more rigorous in terms of don't test things that we think we're going to throw away. But once we realize it's something we're going to keep, then it's worth having a deeper investment. So depending upon why we drive, depending upon the driver for doing testing, whether it's to improve sort of speed development or reliability and maintainability, we sort of try and balance those trade-offs. And so we don't have a hard and fast rule that everything that goes into production has unit test, functional test, and integration test. We don't, because it's a poor investment to do that. And so the choices about when to do that are more nuanced because of the way we're doing this, because we throw stuff away. So it's harder.
right.
Is this process something you expect that you keep doing when you're in high volume production, lots of live users, and if so, is there a way that you condition customers to expect that things are going to keep changing? I guess I've lived in both worlds on that, but every day they come to it and there's a different thing working differently.
Yeah, that can be a problem. So a lot of our tests will run only for new users, so we kind of put a test in there. So if the user was created after the test, then they are put in the test.
But say the test is successful.
Yeah.
You would only deploy it to the new user?
No. Well,
See?
then once we decide that it's worth, that it affects retention, we'll put everybody in there. So yeah, the site is constantly changing, and it's just the reality.
So we have the benefit of having worked with someone that's done this for years at the whole Eric Ries lean startup InView stuff. They've been doing this for a number of years, and so Manuel, the CEO, has pointed out to us in advance, and now that it's happened, you're going to piss off a group of users, and you've got choice. We've got choices about whether to irritate them or not, but the existing users and customer advisory board have already complained to us, stop changing things so much. However, it's a self-selection that we don't want, those users who are happy right now are happy with a product that we know needs to get better. So if getting better produces something that's not quite in their sweet spot, it is a sacrifice we're willing to make to go for what we believe is a larger vein of users out there so that we can get a bigger total population. So we don't intentionally try and mess with existing users, and it doesn't actually happen that often, but that's a possible side effect. And we have, at times, we have high volume, depending on whether we get.
Depends on how you define high volume.
Yeah.
High volume.
Well, I guess,
is
could
one
you
to-
gather your results and findings into a release as opposed to immediately putting them out every time?
No.
No, that wouldn't be mean.
Yeah, I'll never do that again
Yeah.
in any company I ever work at again. Why? That's a whole nother talk. That's a lean startup talk. I actually did it last week at the Lean Startup Circle, and I'll do it again, and it's just changes everything for the better. And it's not right for everybody and everything. It's right for the stuff that I'm interested in.
Y'all doing any funnel tracking at all, or is it really just
Yeah,
MySQL
we
queries?
do, but we do that sort of outside of here. We do funnels on Google Analytics, and we also write some of our own funnels based on events that we track.
Yeah, we've got a couple different funnels, user return funnels, like user activation funnels. We track them manually, not with built-in tools, as well as using Google Analytics. So it's
Just some homebrew?
what's that?
Homebrew?
Yeah, I mean, one of the key principles we discovered after a while was there's no metric in our system. There's no metric in anybody else's system that isn't also in ours. So we are the master of all of our metrics data because we've run into enough cases where we sent data to other systems and we want to get it back out, and they've already, processed it, sliced and diced it the way they want it, and now we want to get it out differently, and they're like, well, we don't do that. Try to go to Google Analytics to determine, individual hit rates for specific users that are in a segment you didn't define. Well, you can't do it. Well, we can, because we have the data. So everything stays in our system, and some stuff gets sent out.
How many A/B tests do you guys run at once? How long does one last?
That's a good question. I checked today. We're currently running 14. Some of them run for just a few days. Some of them run for a few months.
Yeah.
It's all over the place.
There's some we forget. Like, what is that one? And why is it still here?
So typically, I'd say a couple weeks. Typically.
Yeah, I mean,
That's lean.
When we got hit by Lifehacker a couple months ago, we got double order magnitude registrations in an hour jumped up and went and just sustained for a while. It was awesome because suddenly every experiment we had that took, to get to that 700, it had been taking us a weekish or so. It'd be like, oh, I just got a cup of coffee and that experiment's done. We need to go do another experiment because we've already learned what we need to do. And we were like cranking experiments out. It was faster than we could deal with.
Yeah, it's like a homepage experiment. We can get results back really quickly because there's so much traffic. But something that's like really farther down, like the grocery list, like he was talking about, it might take weeks. Or a monetization experiment, it might take months.
Retention experiments take a while.
Yeah,
They
so
take
it
turn
really varies.
3, 4, 5 times.
And what percent of your tests are like fails or require no change?
I don't know. 50-50, really, I guess.
Yeah, and it's, the great thing is if the new alternative fails, it's not a failure. It's a learning. So now we know that alternative stunk as equally as the existing one, but we're not done until we move the meter on that first thing that I talked about, which is that key business metric. We've got to get that dial turned up. If we can't, we keep doing it until we do.
Good. Time for one more? Go ahead.
Quick question then. Do you guys ever do 3 at a time? Like, does Vanity support that?
Yeah, it does support as many as you want.
Many alternatives?
And just one quick limitation is you can have as many as you want, but it is always even. Like if you have 2, it's 50-50. That's something that we've actually taken and forked and should probably release at some point, but we support like now 10-90, 10%, 90%. But by built-in Vanity, it's even distribution always.
So you can skew how you want them
Yeah,
to.
sometimes we want to roll out something to 10% of the users, right? We'll see how it affects, and then we crank it up.
Yeah.
Or shut it down.
Right.
We shut it down.
There's one more question.
Yeah, do you guys ever go back to some of these tests and run it again 6 months later, 3 months later, see if there's any change, there might be several.
Not the exact same test, but we've run variations of things.
Yeah, it's usually what we'll do is when we focus on a particular metric and we get that metric to where it's good enough, acquisition, registration, retention, activation, whatever, we'll move on. And then we'll fix the biggest obstacle, whatever it is. And that might then sort of slice the top off of the mountain, and then the next peak comes up as the tallest peak. And it might be back in the same neighborhood as where we tested before. So we're like, oh, we're back here testing, trying to improve, the getting started flow again, right? Well, because we don't go until we reach the ultimate number, we go until we're good enough, and then we stop and move on. So we'll return back to a particular spot and start some new tests. Hopefully we'll have enough memory to remember what we did before and not do it again. Can't guarantee we haven't done that, but that's the idea.
All right, thanks.
All right,
Thanks.
So, right.